The lead up to week 2 of the 2014 NFL season is one of the most brutal weeks that I've ever seen in my about 30 years of being an NFL fan. There's no question. The Ray Rice saga, Greg Hardy situation, Ray McDonald situation, and then as you get towards the end of the week, then the news breaks about Adrian Peterson being arrested on suspicion of child abuse. It was a welcome distraction, I think, for all parties involved. Well, certainly the NFL, who, while they might not be able to control the individual actions of the players, shares a large portion of the blame for their inaction and their reactions and their piss poor reactions at that to what has happened with these players and what they have done. It was welcome for the media, I'm sure, to a degree, certainly for us as fans, the teams, to get to the action at hand and focus on the games themselves in week 2 of the 2014 NFL season. And frankly, the weekend of games perfectly matched the week that led up to it. It was a screwy-ass weird week. The first really screwy thing about it were just all the injuries that happened. A.J. Green, Jamal Charles, Knowshon Moreno, RG3 and Deshaun Jackson, Peanut Tillman, Vernon Davis. The names go on and on. It was like a walking mash unit on Sunday in the NFL. Big name players, big star players dropping like flies. Some injuries obviously more significant than others, but the bottom line is, a lot of you that play fantasy football were killed by some of these injuries, no question about it. It just really felt like the perfect fitting end almost to a brutal week for the National Football League. And of course, just like with every week of the NFL season, there are going to be winners and there are going to be losers. Let me start off with some of the winners from this past weekend's slate of games. You got to go first to San Diego. The Chargers took it to the Seahawks. A lot of people, I think, picked the Seahawks to go into San Diego and handle business. Especially after the Chargers couldn't get the job done in Arizona the previous Monday night. The Chargers showed no fear. They took no prisoners, and they took it to the Seahawks. An impressive performance that makes me really think that the best team in the AFC West plays in San Diego, not Denver. Then you've got the Philadelphia Eagles. However you do it, 2-0 is 2-0. And to go on the road and beat a quality Colts team, yes, who is 0-2, but the bottom line is they got the job done again, showing that they have the ability to come back from any deficit, that they're never out of a game. Imagine if they get their stuff together in the first half, just how scary and dominant this Eagles team could potentially be. But again, 2-0 is 2-0. You got to look at the Bears. After the first half of that game on Sunday night against San Francisco, it was starting to look like it could get really, really ugly really, really quickly. And the narrative about this team was going to fit basically everything that I had said about them heading into the preseason. And I'm not about to sit there and change my perspective. However, I will give the Bears credit because just like what the Eagles did, they found a way to win a game that they should have lost. That is what good teams do. Now, I'm not about to sit there and say the Bears are a good team because in part it felt like the 49ers just pissed the game down their leg, and that was more responsible for the Bears winning. Is Kaepernick imploded, Harbaugh imploded, the entire team of the 49ers imploded. But the Bears, to their credit, kept fighting. A lot of teams, a lot of lesser teams with a lot less leadership would have caved, been resigned to their fate like the Bears looked like they were going to do for most of that first half and accepted the whooping that was coming. But they didn't. They fought. And it made me proud to be a Bears fan that they fought back and won a game that most people envisioned they weren't going to win. The Panthers, 2-0, maybe the most impressive team in the NFC for sure, and perhaps all of the NFL. To dominate the Lions in the manner that they did, impressive. And then the Buffalo Bills, a real surprise to many out of the AFC. This is a team that, while I'm not really ready to sit there and crown their asses just yet, they play good defense, they run the ball effectively, they minimize turnovers. That's a winning formula still in today's NFL. The Bills at 2-0 in first place in the AFC East. Who'd imagined, huh? Now let's get to the losers and start off with the 49ers. Here you are, your regular season opener in your new, beautiful $1 billion stadium. You come out like gangbusters early on. It looks like you're going to embarrass the Bears. You're going to dominate the Bears. You're going to destroy the Bears. And you're going to sit there and stamp your place as an elite team in all of the NFL. And then the second half happened, and Kaepernick implodes. Your team's discipline was non-existent. The defense starts to get exposed. Harbaugh looked like he lost his composure, and as a consequence, his team lost its composure. The whole narrative about the 49ers changed in one half of football, with people maybe starting to question whether this Niners team is ready to implode throughout the entire season. The Colts, 0-2 is 0-2. And even though they've lost to the Broncos and Eagles in a close fashion, and you could make an argument that they had chances to win both games, and they most certainly did, bottom line is this is a team that had a tough start to their schedule, and they're 0-2. It's a lot harder to get to the playoffs from 0-2 than it is from, let's say, 1-1. About 12% of teams do it. I think the Colts can be a part of that 12%, but that's still an incredibly tough hill to climb. New Orleans Saints, same thing. You've lost 2 games in close fashions, but more so, I think, is that your defense that was so universally praised under Rob Ryan last year, and so much of the NFL media was sucking this guy's dick. Now, where's the criticism of the Saints defense after 2 games? They've been god-awful. They let Matt Ryan go for a franchise record of passing yardage on him in week 1, and they made the Cleveland Browns offense look pretty good in week number 2. That's sad. I think Richard Sherman was a big loser this week. He got exposed a little bit in some ways by the Chargers. They weren't afraid of him and showed maybe a blueprint of how to play the Seahawks the rest of the year. Furthermore, I knock Sherman more so for his conduct post-game. You're supposed to be the best corner in the NFL. You have no problems telling anybody that, and yet when it comes time to drop the Legion of Boom on the microphone in interviews post-game, you walk away like a punk-ass bitch. Man, you're supposed to be better than that. That makes you a loser, but not nearly as big of a loser as Marty Mornhinweg. I feel bad for Jets fans. That was a game in Lambeau that the Jets had a chance to win. They were in position early on to dominate the Packers, and of course things imploded in part because Marty Mornhinweg is an idiot. Why are you sitting there trying to call a timeout at the last second and, oh, by the way, making it even worse, wiping out a potential game-tying touchdown from Geno Smith? Jets, 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 Jets. That's Marty Mornhinweg for you, the same guy that once sat there and had his Lions win the coin toss and deferred because he wanted to take the win. Now let's talk about the big stars from week number 2. I got to start off with Antonio Gates. Here's a 34-year-old tight end, and most people assume his best days are clearly behind him. Well, you couldn't tell if you watched that Seahawks game on Sunday. That was vintage Antonio Gates. 3 touchdowns. He was dominant. He looked like the first ballot type Hall of Fame, future Hall of Famer Antonio Gates that we haven't seen for maybe a few years now. He was the star of stars in that game, maybe outside of perhaps Phillip Rivers. Got to look at Brandon Marshall in that Sunday night game against the 49ers. He came into the game with an ankle injury. A lot of people weren't sure if he was going to play. I wasn't sure if he was going to play. And it looked like he was struggling early on. It looked like he was being used as nothing more than a decoy. But he kept plugging along, he kept fighting, and he ended up making some big-time plays. He caught 3 of Cutler's 4 touchdown passes and made some huge catches in general, and especially those touchdown catches. And that's what a star does. That's what a number 1 wide receiver does. If you ever want to know what the difference between a Brandon Marshall and an Alshon Jeffrey is, you look at that game Sunday night against the 49ers, and you clearly understand, unless you're a complete and total nincompoop and moron, what the difference is. And then you got to look at Darren Sproles for the Eagles. Here's a guy that was brought in via trade, a mid-round pick in the offseason. He comes into the Eagles and he plays in that role similar to what DeAnthony Thomas did under Chip Kelly at Oregon. And Sproles is that X factor. He is a difference maker that Eagles offense under Chip Kelly just did not have last year. So even when a Nick Foles isn't playing that great, which he hasn't been yet, it's almost like it's a quarterback-proof system in a way. And Darren Sproles was the X factor and the difference maker and the primary reason why the Philadelphia Eagles were in a position to win that game late Monday night over the Colts.